Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's time for your questions. Go ahead and unmute yourself or type in. Go ahead and fire away.
And go ahead, Linda, then Dan, then Priya.
Hey, Linda.
Hi there. Hi. So we have a little practice group that's been meeting every Thursday, and we've been doing the foundations with mystical healing practice, the first few pages from,
Right.
yeah. But a question came up that was a little bit sort of off of that particular topic, and I said, well, I'll ask Greg on Tuesday night.
Sure.
The question has to do with the etheric chords blend like in comparison to Rue. We were under the impression, or some of us were thinking, that etheric chords, the blend, is about cleaning up chords that we have, not necessarily actually like disintegrating and getting rid of them.
That's exactly right.
That is exactly okay.
Yeah.
Now,
So it cleans up like positive chords that are contaminated, but also it does clean up negative chords, which makes them easier to release or cut. We use the term cutting because in energy work you would cut them, but part of what happens is the more your body can go into a parasympathetic state, it just actually releases the cord. And even MCKS even mentions in the back, I think it's of the advanced book, that at some point the need for the cutting of cords actually diminishes as the like I think he says, like as a healer develops or something like that. But basically it's the more refined your nervous system becomes, the less the cutting needs to happen, because you're not stuck in sympathetic. You're able to go into parasympathetic, which is when the cord gets released. And so part of the reason why to clean even negative cords is there is a contamination that can happen. And if you don't really clean up that contamination as it accumulates, you start taking on the tendencies of the people with those negative cords. So if we go back to an Uncle Bob, and you have really severe cords with, your Uncle Bob, at some point there's a level of contamination where it's like, oh, my body feels tense, my body feels this, my body feels that. And then after a while, you'll start to notice you start behaving like Uncle Bob a little bit, especially when you get around him. And so I had two like big situations where you could really see the effects of the cords, not just that the cords are there, but to clean up the contamination because of like how it would impact behavior. Because sometimes it's not necessarily that you're going to behave exactly like that person, but the behavior is kind of like in a response to that person's behavior. And so what happens is, even when you walk away from that person, it's like that person's just always with you and you're still responding to other people in that particular way. And so, this is many years ago, but I had I had different specialties, and sometimes I even had different specialties going on at the same time because I could handle like a big patient load. So I would have groupings of people, and there was one point where I was working with addiction, and I would have all kinds of things, different substances, but there were these three young females, and they didn't know each other or anything, but I would say they were probably between the age of like maybe 24 and 32 or something. They were young adults, and they all were in AA. And they would come in for healing, and I would use some oils, but also do healing. And a lot of times when I do healing in person, even if the person's in front of me, I interact with them, but I still work on the energy of body, not directly, especially in situations with like this, because the sex chakra was really there was a lot of cords, and the sex chakra was dirty, but it was from the cords, and I didn't want to be sitting there focused on this young woman's sex chakra. Like, I think it would have like weirded him out. So I would actually kind of turn away, like off to the side a little bit, and I just would make it look like I was working on something else. And all three of them said some version of the same thing. They said it sometimes short and sometimes it was very long-winded. But when I would cut the cords and start to clean up the sex chakra, they'd go, "What are you working on right now?" And I would, because I don't want it to be this like big, weird, embarrassing thing. Not that they would be embarrassed, but a lot of times I didn't know them. So, I just made it as general as possible. And, I would kind of give an explanation. And all three of them said, "Whatever you're working on, that's what makes me drink." Like, that is exactly what makes me drink.
Wow.
And then I was like, well, now I feel like I have to divulge. And, they were all attractive. And if you think about it, the there it's not just chords, but it's willful chords, and it's like from guys who want something from them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that kind of contamination was so uncomfortable that it drove them to addiction. And my point to them was, I don't really think you're addicted. I think you're contaminated. And there's a very big difference. And it's how you try to manage these chords. And so, I taught them some techniques, and they said that it cut down the desire. But part of the issue was the behavior had already been ingrained. And so we had to do some deeper work on like behavioral patterns. But again, it wasn't about addiction. It was about dealing with people who were, men who were being super willful towards them. And, I think every woman has, at least a story or two where some guy did something weird or creepy or, made them uncomfortable at some point in their life. And so that was one aspect. And then another aspect is when I was working on with the group where we were doing work. We did different things, but at the time, it's when I was doing the work with dissociative identity disorder, which in the old days we used to call multiple personality disorder. And you know, at first I was kind of mocked in the group because I mean I was, I'm not educated like them. They're all either have one PhD or multiple PhDs. I mean, there was a lot of like really smart people in the room, and then I'm some Yahoo that's, borderline a little mouthy. And um, you know, I started getting really good results, and so they stopped being mouthy with me, mouthy back, I should say. And after a while, some of them started reaching out like independent of the group, and started to want to maybe explore this weird thing that I was doing, this healing stuff. And so there was one guy in particular, and he had gotten a contract with the county, and basically when somebody had been found guilty of a sex crime before they got their mm, what would you call it, like their punishment or their sentence. Before they would get their sentence, they would have to go see him for a few sessions, and then he would give whatever information to the judge for the sentencing, like this person is potentially somebody who can be rehabbed or maybe not, or it's going to take longer. And so that would affect their sentencing. And so, it became a thing where that's all he was dealing with. And, he was dealing with a lot of pedophiles. And he came to me and he goes like, "Look, I don't know you. I don't feel comfortable saying this to my peers, but doing all this work, he goes, I'm starting to think of children in very inappropriate ways. And I mean, he was just devastated. And I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And he looked at me, and I think he was probably going to hit me because like he was taking it as an insult. Like, oh yeah, you're this kind of person. And I was like, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. You're sitting in front of people who are very angry, very adversarial, very emotional, and are projecting a lot of things at you. And you've only been doing it 3 or 4 months. The level of contamination that you're dealing with, is got to be just through the roof. And I said, the reason that I said that was you're contaminated. And for one, it probably made you feel really weird. And you probably got sick even a couple of times right off the bat. And he went, yeah, like I was already hitting the buttons for him. And I was like, there was days that you were having a hard time showing up to work, and probably in downtime, you just felt like wiped out and had to spend like a weekend on the couch from time to time. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, at some point, that contamination starts to affect your behavior. And he was looking at me and he was like, he wanted to argue it because, like, intellectually, that makes sense to him. I was like, let's just do an experiment. I cut his cords. I cleaned off all the projections that I could in that time frame. And I was like, think about that subject now. And he was quiet and he goes, I can't. And so, just because it was kind of an emergency situation, I fit him in again the next day. I cleaned him up again. I gave him some instructions for taking salt baths, and like I taught him how to cut cords, which he thought was weird, but I think I gave him like my letter opener or something, and I consecrated it, and I said, because like this was going to be too weird. I was like, just ugh. I tried to get him to sniff through, but he was like, yeah, I'm not gonna sniff that. And so all those feelings would stop. Like all of them would stop. And so he said he did it for a few days, and then he admitted, he goes, I really thought a lot of what you said was BS. He goes, so I would stop doing it, and then the feelings would come back, and then I would do the salt bath and the letter opener thing, and they would all go away. And then, so it went back and forth. And those are very extreme situations, but it shows you the potency of when you're in difficult situations and a person has very strong emotions or very repetitive thoughts. Not only is it materializing in the bringing the word or the thought into form, but it can manipulate even another person's behavior or their thoughts and feelings. And so the idea of the etheric cords is to clean up the cords, but it also kind of makes you expel out the the contaminants, the contaminating energy. And sometimes the behavior has been impacted a bit. And so, you go through and you clean up the elements, the elementals, and worst case scenario, you have to go up and do some things on the prefrontal cortex, the the temple minors, like temple minors and the ajna. And you can really break all that stuff down. In that kit coming up in the weekend, we have behavior support, which is actually for breaking down like the byproducts of long-term contamination in cords, amongst other things. I mean, it does other things as well, but that's the whole idea. Like, the idea of cutting cords is amazing, but on the deeper practice, even with energy, that's why you kind of do the pulling, like where you pull those cords out a little bit. You're
Right.
pulling out some of the contamination and some of the things that affect the behavior. And I find that, all of that works good, but when you combine it with essential oils, the essential oils can get deep really fast. And it's one of the things that can switch the behavior and the thought processes very quickly. And rue is very good for the cutting or the releasing. And rue also diminishes the any aspect that it diminishes like conflict, or the tendency to get entangled in a conflict. And so, it helps like with the back and forth of a situation. But really, one of the best things you can do is just constantly clean cords. Like if you just clean, 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 clean. Because, what happens sometimes is the more that you spiritually grow and evolve, your energy gets stronger. And part of what happens is people that are connected to you, be it good or bad, sometimes you're starting to flush things out of them, and it actually is a little contaminating to you. And it's a good thing in a way because your energy body's expanding and they're getting the benefit of your development, but at the same time, you still want to flesh those things out. I would imagine at some point, when a person becomes, sufficiently evolved, that even that becomes like a non-issue. But I'm not there yet. So like they
Well,
they don't bother me like they used to. I will say that. Like even when a group of people are super angry at me or something, I feel it, but I don't feel like how, I mean, it used to ruin like my week or a few days or something. And now it's like, I got to clean up for a couple hours, maybe, and even then, like sometimes it's only maybe an hour, where before it used to be like I'd have a rough week. And I really attribute that to just constantly cleaning cords. I've been using a version of that etheric chords blend, the earlier version before I put it out to people. It was good. It's not as good as this version, but it was the same idea. And man, I just would use it all the time. And do it and then do a little healing on myself, a little sweeping, a little whatever. And it was kind of a game changer for me early on. And when I first started doing healings, it was about 12 years before I came into pH. And I never knew anything about decontamination. Like, you just did healings, and about every 2 years or so, about every 18 months, 2 years, I would get really sick. And I would be sick for like 2 or 3 months. And, I'd go to acupuncture, and my acupuncturist would say, he goes, I call this healer's disease. Like he goes, it happens to every healer. You do healings, and then after a while, he even used the word contamination. He goes, you just got to get rid of the contamination. And even then it didn't register with what he was talking about. But soon as started taking salt baths, using the salt bowl, cleaning the cords, it's never happened to me again. Never. Like not even close.
A bunch of us, when we were doing the protocol last week, we scanned beforehand, like the overall level of congestion in our system before we started. And then every couple of oils, we'd stop and we'd scan again because we wanted to see like what's happening with, the progression of the oils. And in sharing our experiences, we all had a very similar experience of that congestion. Really, after doing the violet, the blue, and then the green, like the overall level of congestion in our auras felt like practically gone before we did the rest,
Right.
And Artie was noticing that it seemed like it was also helping with the cords as we continued to progress.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
So that process of doing the left, the front, the back, all the sides and the feet really seems like, and I've been trying to do it every day, just at least a little bit, because it seems like even just doing those first three really cleans up your aura fast.
Yeah, and it keeps teaching your energy body to be more protective. So it cleans it up, but it also like is preventative so that more doesn't come in. It's like why you would wear like rings or a pendant. Like you would wear amethyst, for example, to have protective qualities. Yes, it activates upper centers, but when consecrated, it does. And you would wear it so that, like, if somebody projects negativity to you, it hits the violet in your field, and then the thought form just kind of drops, right?
Mm.
And green does something different, orange does something different, but gold does something different. But the reason to wear the amethyst is to put the violet in your field. And so you're just using the oil to do the same thing. And not only are you using the oil to do the same thing, you're teaching your body, hey, this violet product, I need more of it. I need a lot of it. And so it's not just like you're putting it in the field, like projecting it. It's like the body starts going, oh, we should be producing this. Like this is a thing. We should actually start, generating more. And so part of the cleaning up of the congestion and the protective quality is also you're generating more of it from the inside out. And so when potentially what happens is when somebody really starts projecting something at you, your body just goes, hey, you remember that violet thing? Let's do that.
Mhm.
That generates more violet, and it becomes even more protective than just if you were to project it into the particular areas.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will continue with that.
Yeah.
And
I love that you guys are doing that.
yeah, I think there's 8 of us, and we've been meeting every Thursday,
Nice.
and we're gonna keep going. So another question was that I ran into was the white light, surrounding ourselves with the white light.
Mhm.
I think I had the experience of at one point the white light actually turned gold.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
what happens?
It can.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it happens for everybody,
Okay.
but it definitely, like, the more you refine your energy body, that gold just becomes like or excuse me, the white light becomes a building block for some of the other energies. And part of the issue is that sometimes the colored energies are a little bit too high a vibration for something that's really in potentially in distress in an area. So that white light just kind of fits that thing of like, just take what you need, you know. And so I remember in the early days, I would think, well, electric violet does all that. I'm just going to use electric violet. But what would happen is people who are really sick, had like a really serious health issue, the vibration was too strong and it would just pass through them. So it was almost like I did nothing. And so I started going, well, I'll go to solid colors. And then, I was like, well, maybe I'll go to medium colors. And then I started, even in certain situations, going to like almost a little bit of a darker color just for a little tiny bit.
Mhm.
And then I would start raising the brightness of the color. And that worked. But the thing that worked best is if I just went back to just good old fashioned white, did white for a while, and then changed into the colors, started working like substantially.
Mhm.
And I had this one person where Robert bought a person that we'd done healing on and restored her eyesight. And she only had one eye. This other woman had her eyesight was just diminishing, like it was over a period of time. And I did like colored, I did really advanced stuff. I was doing regeneration, I was doing all the things that you know how to do. And I just, at one point, I was making no progress. And so I was like, well, you know, maybe we just go to white. And in one session, the eyesight got like 90% better.
Wow.
And it was just because everything I was doing was too high of a vibration for what that condition needed. Like later, I switched over to colors and, started doing things with colors. But that's why I included that white light in it. Is even if a person is high vibration, like you get an injury or like, your liver stops functioning, whatever, sometimes you got to go like down into the gutter and like pull it out. And, not that white light's like gutter energy, but it's got the properties of all the other things, but it's of a vibration that like you could even use on animals. Like when I worked on the animals out at the ranch, even the white light wasn't enough. So I had a crystal wand made that was a very, very light, smoky quartz. You know, it was like you really couldn't tell that it was smoky quartz until you laid it down on a white piece of paper. And then you could see that it had like a little like shade of, you know, that smoky quality. And part of it was to step down the energy enough so that I could do healings on the animals. As soon as I started using that one, I started rocking the healings at the ranch. And it was
That's,
just,
yeah, it's,
what's
yeah.
that?
That's such a good reminder because, you know,
Yeah,
we feel like we're getting more powerful, we're getting better,
right.
we're stronger, we're doing all these things.
Yeah.
And it's but it's like sometimes that's just not what's most appropriate. That we
Yeah.
have to remember it. Yeah.
So what I started, you know, what made me go there was I started noticing when I would do very high meditations that the next week my healings were like, eh. And I was like, I'm running so much energy. Like I have so much energy flowing through. Like I don't get it. And it was because the vibration was too high.
Yeah.
And so I just did things where I'd still doing the meditation, but then I would come in and I'd like really lower the vibration when doing the healing. And it worked, you know, it worked.
Thank
Then
you.
the healings after the meditation were much stronger because I was matching the vibration of the energy to the what the person needed, and then just slowly elevated their energy, you know, just kept raising the vibration.
Right.
And so, which is another way of saying healing, you know, just it's a different way of looking at it. But even from going from white to like maybe a medium color and then refined and refined and refined up to the point where you start using maybe, you know, something very high vibration, even that transition from like basic white up to that is engaging a healing process regardless of where you're projecting it in the body. Like if you just take them through that journey, that actually stimulates a lot of healing that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily stimulate in other ways.
Mm. Excellent. Thank you so much for all of
You're
that.
so welcome.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you
Just a sec. I thought we were gonna keep going. But go ahead, Dan, then Lolly.
Hey Dan.
Hey, Greg. Um, I've had a interesting thing happen. Like Friday, I
Uh-huh.
had one of my colleagues, it was like we kind of really got into it with each other. It was like, you know, I think I mentioned like I got a new role and then she took one as well. And then she's like doing this methodology for how the work is done.
Mhm.
And
Who's this? It's you and who else?
one of my colleagues,
Okay,
one of my
gotcha.
not my manager, but my just a colleague, right?
Right.
And so with the way she's doing things, I guess when I push back a little bit, it's like these things get really escalated to the point where, you know, when we try to talk, you know, she's not listening, she's just speaking, and I don't understand. You know, I try to say something, you know, and then but it just, we don't get anywhere. We went through another one of those episodes today. My manager is out of town right now, and we're going to bring this. We kind of brought it up to her before she went on PTO. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I mean, it's almost like I'm being like nitpicked that you need to do this. And it's like, and you know, I'm apparently doing something where she's getting, I mean, she was at the point of tears on Friday when we were talking, and she's like super stressed out with this new role that she's doing. And I'm like feeling so bad that she's getting so uptight with it, you know? And
Can I ask you a really brutal question?
sure,
Is she capable of doing the job?
yeah,
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But she's like very stressed out with all the things that come with it, kind of thing. So there's so anyway, I found out today that I'm the one who's creating her stress. She mentioned today that, I'm the one who's creating her stress. So I'm not getting it. And then it's kind of like when Di was here this morning hearing me go through this, she comes in with like this emotional release, right? One of these little oils, which was kind of like really good. And then I kind of figured that I'm picking up on uh, her drama that she's going through. And I'm not sure, like you're saying, there's two coins to click, right?
Mhm.
And I want to make sure that I'm in a position where I don't create the issue for her. I don't get wrapped into the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Like, what did I do? Like, how could I avoid this and not get like sucked into this? And I'm
So,
not saying
so
I'm an angel either. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing that's
right.
setting her
So,
off.
so when you guys are talking, you're presenting something to her, she's presenting something to you, or it doesn't matter what it is, it's just going back and forth?
Well, yeah, so just to break it down a little more detail here, there is a list of stuff that each one of what the team members are working on, right? She's looking at it from one perspective, I'm looking at it from another perspective, right? A little more granular. These are what's assigned for these people. I'm the like that, not a resource manager, but part of my role is to assign the work to these people. And as we go through this, how long is it going to take? All this thing. It's like, it's that interaction and that dialogue that just seems like, she says, you need this, this, this. And I try to work with her on that. And that's where we get these friction or whatever that's coming across. So this is
So,
probably,
so
yeah,
she's saying you need, like, say, okay, say the things where you go this, you need A, you need B, you need C, you need D, right? Is she
or
just
this is not
firing that
me.
off to you, and then when you ask questions, she gets a meltdown, or is it when you're talking back and asking her questions or saying something, she has an issue? Like,
I don't know.
what is it? She's super overwhelmed. That's why I was asking, like, is she
Yes.
capable? And so it could be even in like how things are being communicated. Is it okay if I use our little example?
Of course.
So we went through a little phase. This was about what, 4 or 5 months ago, where we sit down, Samantha and I, we do the emails together, and I started noticing that you would get frustrated, and she, like, at some point we'd be doing the emails and she'd start crying, and she was like, I hate emails, I hate this and I hate that. And when we kind of like, let's just stop and like just like look at what's happening, and I don't know, we were going back and forth, and we weren't having arguments, but it was just like every time we'd sit to do emails, she would cry. And this went on for like a month. And finally what I realized was I was giving, because I don't type the answers, we read them together, and then she kind of formats it and puts it in. And I was talking too fast and giving her too much information. And so I was like, oh, okay, how about if we do this? I say like 5 or 6 words and I give you time to type it rather than just assuming you're going to remember it and then, writing it all out. And as soon as we did that, we've never had another incident. But like the interaction, like I was saying too much too fast, and then she's trying to write it all out and forming it, and then she's doing that and then trying to process what I'm saying so that she can put it in a sentence. And like when we looked at it, I was like, well, of course you're crying. That wasn't very fair for me just to go bleh, and then have you make an email out of my verbal whatever I cough up. And so we changed like how we communicated, and we just like even have like a little safe word. She'll go, hold on, which we had never discussed it before, and I don't know that either one of us knew that that was an issue. And so she didn't even know to say hold on, and I didn't know like, oh, I should go slower so she can process it. Like my brain's just thinking about whatever. And so in that communication, it stopped her from getting overwhelmed, and it kind of resolved it. And so she is being overwhelmed by something. Like, so if we can figure out what that is, like when you're interacting, like hard task, your task. I honestly, I think it's processing the information. Like, are you having to exchange information, or you're having to give her feedback? Like, what's happening when you guys go back and forth?
It's like, well, we can't talk because we're over talking each other. I'm trying to explain, and then she keeps talking about something else. So, but it's very much like, yes, she's totally overwhelmed with what she's doing with this new role that she has.
So she bounces around from subject and doesn't have a clear line of thought.
Yes, that I try to answer one thing, then she's on to something else, and then she's on to something else. And I'm trying to say, time
What,
out.
like, would your guys's, would you have the relationship or the setting where you can go, okay, here's the topics. Like, we're gonna talk about a topic. And then if she starts to bounce off, like in a polite way, go, well, we can add that to as another topic, but let's finish this before we move on to the next thing on our list, and just try to, it's like you're trying to compensate for her, because she's probably overwhelmed, like you said, with her work thing, and going back and forth, she's just going to get frustrated. It's going to happen faster. So if it's like the old days in like the Native American thing where you go, okay, like I'm trying to, like, here's the talking bottle, you hold the bottle, you get to
Oh,
talk,
right, the stone,
and
the
then you
stick,
switch it and
yes.
go, okay, I have the bottle now, I can talk. It's to really kind of resolve these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if some version of that where she's getting the time to talk, but she does need to stay on topic, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's part of it where even when she says something, like give it like a pause and go, this is what I heard you say, and then say it back to her, and then go, okay, and then you can go, okay, let's cross that off the list. And then, so that way she doesn't feel like she needs to fit everything in. I mean, it's kind of like what she was doing, like kind of what I was doing to Samantha. I'm gonna fit all this stuff in, make it work. Really.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't fair to Samantha to like take and translate my brain dump. And so like I just had to spend more time doing it. I think she needs to do the same thing. Like she needs to maybe spend a little more time expressing it and processing it, but she's probably not going to come to that on her own. So if you can establish like a little bit of a parameter, like go, hey, let's just change the way we communicate for a day. Let's see if we can't make this better. And then, you can have the talking coffee cup, or whatever it is, and like, okay, who gets to hold the stress ball, or whatever it is. Like if you need to do that for her, I mean, after a little tiny bit, after what, like 2 weeks, I start talking, and Samantha has no problem going, hold on. Just, because we engaged a different kind of, we're doing the same thing, but we engaged a different behavior. And
Yeah.
I think what you're feeling is she's having difficulty with her job in general, and then you have a conversation with her, and it makes her really aware of how difficult, how much difficulty she's having in the situation. So then, everything becomes like a stress response for her. And so it's just kind of a thing where you're like, okay. And then even if you get the coffee cup, say I'm not saying that you need to do that, but like it gives you the idea. You go, okay, let me just take a breath and process what you just said to me. Like give her moment to go,
Okay.
and so when they're like in that space, also your guys' energies are bouncing off of each other, and so you can utilize that to help her. And one of the things that you do is like as she's talking, you just put your awareness on the heart, and then it starts bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. And almost every time you'll go, okay, go ahead and tell me. And she's saying all her stressful stuff. You put your awareness on the heart, and after a couple of minutes, she'll go, like, and then she'll say whatever she's saying. But you can see that all of a sudden it's like you're literally transmuting her
Oh,
stress for her. And it's actually what I used to train psychologists to do is, there's these energy mechanics that you would do so that when somebody's expressing something where they're having difficulty or old painful event, there's things that you would do energetically to help facilitate that, help them have that flow and not get overwhelmed or either overwhelmed by the information or the emotion or the memory or the trauma. And so there's these little things that you would do, and that's a big one, is you just sit there and you put your awareness on the heart. And so whatever they're saying, your awareness is here and you're listening. But as the energy comes in, it's like it's getting transmuted. And all of a sudden, after a little bit, she'll go, you know. And so, I mean, you can use that in all kinds of applications, but she's struggling. You're just making her more aware of how much she's struggling. It's not really anything, like when I look at it, it's not anything that you're doing. It's just, it looks like your guys is back and forth. She looks like she stress talks, like talks really fast, try to get all the points in because she's verbalized it, but it's probably not getting processed very well in the conversation.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like he says the same thing, kind of the same thing over and over. And I said, I'm getting that. I'm getting that. I
Right.
got that. And then it's
Right.
kind of like, but what I want to bring up is something else. But then she goes back to the same thing. Well, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. It's like, well,
So,
what
okay. So like in that case, so like if you're going back and forth and you go like, okay, I'm getting that, I'm hearing that, like you could even, because you can buy little moments of time in different ways. And really what she's looking for is that you're hearing it, getting it, that she's expressing it, whatever it is. And so you can go, that's interesting. And then go back and go, is it okay if I ask a question? And then,
oh, yeah.
it's not that now she's defending the things that she said. You've taken it in and you've processed it and you've demonstrated that with your behavior. Like, okay. And then, boy, I hadn't really processed that. Give me a moment. And then is it okay if I ask you a question? And I just want to clarify a couple little pieces on the things that you said.
Right,
And
right.
it's in the conversation, she's probably entering the conversation defensive already. And so anything that you say becomes like, this is the reason why I'm being defensive,
Yeah.
And part of it is like she looks like she talks in fragments. Like that's what I call stress talking.
Mhm.
I used to, how certain mantras are like, oh, you can chant Om Mani Padme Hum and it's, stress reducing or Om or whatever. I used to tease some of my corporate clients. I go, you've been doing the wrong mantra. You need to do the right mantra. That mantra is always going to generate stress. And they go, what mantra am I chanting? And I would go, I repeat myself when under stress. I repeat myself when under stress. I repeat myself when under stress. I repeat myself under stress. But if you watch somebody stressed out, that's what they do. They
Yeah.
keep repeating themselves, and I mean, anytime you're trying to get a point across, you got to really say it like 3 or 4 times, but like when somebody's stressed out, they'll just keep repeating themselves, like, you're not hearing me. That's basically what they're saying. You're not
Right.
hearing, you're not getting it. So you
Right.
just go, okay. And then even if she starts to talk, go, wait, I'm still processing the thing that you said. Like, let her see that you're processing it or even struggling to process it, and I go back to that there's this one CEO that like she would ask me questions and I had a really good track record with her. But if she asked me a question like, what do you think's going on here? And I would go, this A, B, C, and D. She would argue with me the whole session. And even if I could provide the information, she would be like at the end, I don't know about that. But if I did the same thing and I went, oh boy, that's a tough one. There's this, but then there's that. And there's A, and then there's B. And how are A and B working together? And then C. I wasn't saying anything. I was just going through and acknowledging each piece of information. And then she'd listen and I'd go A, B, C, and D. And she'd go, oh.
Wow.
But if I did it where I just gave her the information, we would argue the whole time. Like not argue, but
Yeah.
she
It
wasn't
sounds
buying what
similar.
I was saying, you know what I
Right.
mean?
It
And
sounds.
so I was like, I have to change how she hears it. And I started noticing like with this is the first time I really realized this is like if people see that information comes to you too quickly, that they don't think you processed it. And so I would go through and like externally process it in front of her and go, basically break down my thought process like this and then that and then boy, that's a tough one. And then I would say the same exact thing. It worked every time. And some of it is that if you go back to the three brains, a lot of times, like if you're looking at stress thinking, they're in the instinctive mode, right? They're in the instinctive responses, which means automatic behavior, automatic thinking. And so you pausing the brakes and giving them a moment to go, let me process this for a moment. At first, it feels good, like they start to feel the emotion, like because the instinctual responses are calming down. So you're even starting to transmute and temper some of the instinctive responses. And then if you just give them a little bit of time, they go into like a cognitive thing. And then in that place is where you can have a back and forth. But when they're in instinct, they're just going to go into triggered responses. They're just going to go automatic behavior, automatic thinking, and just like a triggered response, which is usually just a thing that they've done over and over again whenever they get stressed out. And so that pause, that gap, just like you would use it in a mantra, is a way for them to go from instinct to emotion to cognitive function. And you can teach somebody that, but in this particular situation, she's so in crisis that you almost manually have to do it for her. And then once you do it, she'll start to gain the experiences of what it is, and it will actually help reduce her ability to not be so overwhelmed. And it actually will make her a little bit more cognitive with her work. Because I guarantee you, like how she's talking with you is how she's approaching that work. She's stressed out. She probably doesn't feel like she can do it, or she's not going to meet a deadline, or she's being judged, or whatever it is. And she's in automatic thinking and behaving, even trying to do the stuff that she's doing. And then she comes to you and you're just validating all her fears and anxieties.
Huh. Wow. Yep. See that. Wow.
You're not doing anything wrong. I want to be clear about that. Like it's just if she was in a different place, you guys wouldn't be having the issue. But because she's in the place that she's in, her behavior and personality shifts and changes a bit. And so you just have to deal with this side of her. Like it's not her across the board. But if it goes on too long, this is like when you know her, that's what you'll know. When she interacts with other people, her personality will be different because of how they interacted. But
Yeah.
she just knows stressed out in conflict. Like I don't feel, fill in the blank. And so you almost have to manually take her on like a little journey. And it doesn't have to be a talking to. It can just be doing the heart, taking a pause. Let me process this. This is what I hear you saying. Okay.
Ooh, this is what-
Huh. And then even like if you know what she's saying, ask her questions
Yeah.
where you're validating what she's saying. So like if she was trying to say A comes after B and then C, and you go, yeah, I get it. But like, and then you're moving on, go, so what you're saying is
Yeah.
A is coming after B, and then what's after B? C? And she'll go, yes. And then you go, ah. So then she just succeeded. She got through to you. She already got through to you, but she's not. It's not even that she's not getting the validation. She's so stressed out that she's just in stress mode. And so, it's a kind thing to do. It helps her to get into a place where she can do her job better, but it will make your guys' thing way easier and it'll make you have like a nicer week, you know.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might add 5 or 10 minutes to your guys' meeting. Like
Oh, but
a
heck,
lot of
this
times,
is,
yeah, a lot of times it doesn't add a lot.
well, it's
But 5-10 minutes, maybe more. But what will happen is you'll get to the heart of the matter much quicker. And so it might not even lengthen the time that you guys interact.
yeah. Well, anything we can do to get beyond this impasse, because like,
Yeah.
just Friday into Monday again, it's like, oh no. But there was a bit of an emotional release that I just felt too, like just putting that pause in there. Can I ask you a question? Kind
Yeah.
of thing. So because I just anyway,
Practice this one where you go, hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask you a question? Like,
Yeah.
like look very contemplative.
Yeah.
And then, because that will lower her defenses.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Is there actually, we're remote, we're working both remotely.
Mhm.
So is there an oil that I can use to
I
kind of
would just probably use hyssop. Like,
Hyssop.
yeah, hyssop would probably do it. Chocolate root cleanser would probably do it. Um, as time went by, I think hyssop should be the first round, but as time goes by, probably something like tuberose would be good. But like that's really when it gets refined. Right now,
oh
it's a little bit more like cleaning up a crime scene. You know what I mean? Like there's
yeah,
been the back and forth for a while.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
so just right off the bat, hyssop, it will deepen her breath, it calms things down, but it would hyssop's very activating to the heart and the crown. It
So
helps with the
that's
activation of the
good.
two. And it reduces the negative back and forth, which I think her body is probably super agitated.
Yes.
Like whenever you see like fragmented talking or stress talking, um, the immune system is usually highly, 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 highly agitated. And so it's a way to calm that down so that she really has a little bit more time to process things. Yeah.
Is orange? I mean, I kind of checked in with her a little bit later in the day, and I was kind of like, should I even send her this email? Because I was asking a question if we could do this, do that, or something like that. And I saw the bunch of orange when I just kind of closed my eyes and checked in on that.
She's probably trying to keep you away from her. Like you're probably picking
I
up
was
that
wondering if
more.
that was
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those things.
that's
Yeah,
probably what that is.
yeah, yeah.
Because like orange on one level, it's very protective and it keeps out other people's energy field and it generates movement. But if she doesn't want to talk to you, it would be orange coming out of her field because she doesn't
Yeah, like
she's
no more. Yeah,
go away.
yeah,
Like if
exactly.
somebody says go away, there's a
Exactly.
bunch of orange that comes out of their body, like go, like literally go away.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of in line.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, you keep me
What-
posted on this and like,
Yeah,
we
I
might
bet.
need to talk through it a little bit more, but
Yeah, I just need to
and
practice the slowing down rather than trying to keep saying something when she's trying to talk and doing her thing, and then I talk back during that. So it's kind of like
yeah,
need to cut that.
I
Cut
would
that
say
stuff.
it's not about content, it's about the movement back and
Yes,
forth.
yeah, it's
So just make it about the
agreed,
movement. Yeah.
agreed. Yeah, right. One more thing too was
Sure.
the eclipse. With that, there's dark energy with that, or actually, or
It,
off energy. Actually had the chance to have dinner with Anthony last night. He's in town.
oh,
So
tell him hi for me.
that was real
Yeah, tell
sweet.
him
So
hi
the
for
three of
me.
us went
Yeah.
out. That was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So he's doing good. It was so good to see him in person again,
Yeah. It's been a
So
while.
yeah, but he was mentioning too something about the moon with respect to, or excuse me, the eclipse, and it's kind of like an off kind of negative energy or something like that.
Yeah, like if you look at most people's spiritual cord, like during the eclipse, the cord and the blue pearl like reduce, and it could even be a little bit like draining the energy. And so like I noticed there was like all of a sudden I started like during the eclipse I started smelling a really funny smell and my eyes
Oh,
got really like irritated and just for like 4 or 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then it passed. But
were you in the umbra, the full umbra?
um I don't think so. Are you talking about like the path of?
Yeah, the path of the
No, I mean I think we got a partial. I don't think we got a,
yeah, we were
but
about 50%. Yeah.
it passes. And I looked at my cord didn't change at all. And
Okay.
so like I was like, yay. But we just kept working. We didn't go outside and look at it or anything. We can look at pictures afterwards and not fry our eyeballs.
It's it,
Yeah. Like people sent me a bunch of pictures. I sat and looked at my phone at the eclipse. And so people sent me a bunch of nice pictures. And so I just did that.
okay.
Tell Anthony hi for me though.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
me and Samantha. Yeah.
yeah, I certainly will. Okay. Well, thanks again, Greg. Thank you
You
so
too.
much. See you
Uh,
around.
And just kind of in this vein, someone actually mentioned the communication support and the 4 quadrants. Would that be
Yeah.
complementary with this?
Yeah, for that you could even probably come up with a stack, but the communication support would be good. It just helps with like how we communicate, but also how we receive communication. And so yeah, but like his kid's probably not there by now, or is it?
Not till his probably won't arrive till Wednesday.
Yeah. So Dan, in that kit for the class weekend is communication support.
Okay.
When you get the kit, pull that
Yeah.
out, do the 4 quadrants a few times with that,
Great.
and maybe do that every day for a little bit until this kind of gets better and
It
resolves.
kind of heals.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I would
Communication.
even say when you're talking with your team leader or your boss or whoever the manager is or whatever, you can go, yeah, we're coming up with new ways of trying to communicate and make sure that we each get heard. Like just make it sound like a very positive and that you're not really having conflict. It's just we're working out communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to go back in there and it's like, oh
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's never good.
No.
Yeah. Great.
So good.
Thanks again.
Sorry, I just lost my Zoom. Go ahead, Priya, then Lolly.
Hey, Priya.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. I've got a little feedback and also a question.
Yes.
So, feedback first. Couple days ago, I go through these cycles where there's a phase when I eat very less salt. And so I was coming back from the city. It was a big day, and I bought some takeaway Chinese. I came home, I had it, and I think it was too salty. It would have been too
Yeah.
salty even for a person who loves salt. And 30 minutes later, my breath rate, maybe the blood pressure was just
Yeah.
right.
That's what salt does.
And it
Yeah,
was so much.
it can even start to generate like mucus in the lungs and throw your respiratory rate off and make your breath shallow. And
Yeah,
yeah, like so one of the things is, use some sort of a diuretic after that because it's probably not just salt, it's probably also MSG. And, you know,
Yeah.
MSG can have, like, I think there's like 20 something different names that MSG can go under, including natural flavorings, by the way. Doesn't mean natural flavorings are always MSG, but MSG can use that as something that they, you know, put on the label is natural
Yeah.
flavor. And so I would use like something that has a diuretic effect. So like lovage or juniper or sandalwood, parsley, you know, something like that. And if you don't have those, like even some cedar, you know, something where you just flush out some excess fluid, because part of what's happening is your body's holding on to some fluid. And then deepen the breath with something like hyssop or, you know, just whatever respiratory oils that you have, frankincense,
Well,
German
I couldn't
chamomile,
think
something like that.
I couldn't think of anything in that point in time, and because my breath rate was just so fast, I grabbed
Mhm.
some marjoram and I
Yeah,
rubbed some marjoram on my front solar plexus.
yeah.
And Reverend Greg, I think it would have been less than 60 seconds that my heart rate normalized.
Oh, good. Yeah, good, good, good. Yeah. I
I,
mean,
I
'cause
felt like it was magic.
yeah, yeah, it kind of is. The the marjorum's antispasmodic and I mean it hits a bunch of things, but also what marjorum's really good for is also putting you in more parasympathetic. And you know, when the respiratory rate gets up like that, you know, it's stimulating sympathetic activity or fight flight. And so it just the marjoram just pulled you out of fight flight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But how
perfect.
quickly it did it, how quickly it happened, it was like, what just happened? Like, I'm
Right,
thinking here that it's night time and I don't think I can sleep with this heart rate.
right.
And I did nothing else. I applied some marjoram just under the rib cage and 30, 60 seconds and it was gone.
Beautiful.
So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
And like sometimes when the respiratory is rate up too, even though you put that on and it worked and you still want to deepen it, like a lang lang or spikenard will also slow down the respiratory rate somewhat.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, if you feel like it's good, but it's still a little fast, but some of it is you're, like I said, you're just still holding on to fluid, but you know, that passes very quickly, you know, because like, you know, you drink some water, you know, whatever, a little bit of time goes by, you're peeing out a lot of that salt. And so you just got to get out of the um, you know, I want to call it a crisis, but it kind of is. Like I know this one person that if she gets too much salt in food or MSG, she ends up in the emergency room. Like it causes like her heart rate and her respiratory rate and everything to go so high that, you know, she kind of has a little bit of a panic attack and her heart starts going and so I mean it's a very legitimate thing. Like you gotta
Felt like that. It was so serious that I started looking up online and I'm just looking up and I'm like, why am I so sensitive to just everything, to even salt?
Um,
But
yeah, it probably has more to do with just the balance of salt and potassium in your body, but I wouldn't mess with that too much. Like I
yeah.
would just kind of calm everything down and you know, it does it to anybody, but some people are just more susceptible and you know,
Yeah. Now,
yeah.
I have two questions just
Mhm.
quickly. One is I got my bloods done a little while ago, and they could hardly even get any blood out. My hemoglobin was really low, and but now for placement, I need to get another blood test done, and I'm getting scared even going to the nurse because I know that it's not easy for them to get blood out of me and they make a lot of attempts and then I just get bruises and it's just an unsuccessful attempt. So I was thinking, what is it that I can take
So
for
so yeah, so you know, you could try different things, but I would say probably the thing that is the easiest and producing the better long result is take a bunch of chlorophyll. Like, you know, get some chlorophyll from the health food store and take like a decent dose and just do that every day for a little bit. I mean, you could start doing things with like iron and stuff, but iron is very constipating. It can be hard on the digestive tract. Like chlorophyll is a great way to kind of build up the blood and help with some of these aspects. And I think you'll probably find that it's very agreeable. It makes you feel good. It's detoxifying. It does a bunch of good things, and it will address that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And it
I'll
could be
get that.
liquid, it could be capsule, it could be a powder that you mix into a drink. It doesn't matter. Just
Yeah.
some form of chlorophyll.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. And also, I wanted to ask you about Angelica Seed. I can't find much information on it on the website. I'm just curious. Is it like a ginseng? Is it
Well,
um
it's very similar to Angelica root, which is what I usually use for like if I'm doing blends or treating things. The difference with the seed is it's quite a bit better than Angelica root for treating fatigue. And it's very fortifying to the body, and it's a great way to offset certain kinds of fatigue, because fatigue doesn't necessarily mean body wide. It could be certain areas or certain systems that get like fatigued. And the Angelica seed is very fortifying to the endocrine system. It is very like it helps improve and upgrade like the communication happening in the endocrine system. But it's also very fortified to like the immune system, the nervous system, the endocrine system. It offsets a certain kind of fatigue. And you know, I've tried all kinds of different things. Like I try cinnamon, I try thyme. You know, there's all kinds of things. And I think even this week in the newsletter, we talked about asthenia, which is a type of fatigue or depletion. And you know, traditionally you would use like thyme, especially thyme thuyunol or oregano. Thyme thuyunol is much gentler, so that's usually what you would use. But even for me, sometimes that works really, really super well, and sometimes the thyme just doesn't quite get it. And when I look at the energy body, sometimes what it is, it's the endocrine system is very depleted. And so
Yeah.
by going through and, you know, like frankincense or myrrh jump starts the glands and makes them function better. But if you're jump started and functioning better, but you're still really tired and fatigued, it's like, okay, I'm functioning, but you know, you should have saw me when I was 25. You know what I mean? Like you don't quite have that youthful vitality. And the Angelica seed kind of jumpstarts and kicks that fortifying of the endocrine system, so that you know it's strengthening is not the right word, but you know, like Melissa helps you to take like a punch in the heart, like in the emotional body. Angelica kind of does it in the emotional body, in the mind, but it really helps fortify the body more than anything. And
Yeah. I
the
need that.
Angelica seed is even more so.
Yeah.
And so in that realm, there's other things that Angelica root is better for. But in this particular area where you're dealing with Angelica seed, it's pretty hard to beat the seed. I mean, for a long time, I didn't even carry the seed because I was like, Angelica root does so much. Like, why would I get something that's just a different version of that? And treating the fatigue is really the primary reason why I carried the seed, is just fatigue related conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. No,
yeah,
I do need that, so that's
yeah.
good.
And it's also very soothing. Like it's very, very soothing. Like I find it, yeah. So
Yeah, I like the taste of it also. It's
mhm.
nice. It's different. It's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Another thing, I have a bath in frankincense and myrrh every now and then, and it leaves my body throbbing. in a good way. Like I feel like I need it. Like I feel like it's doing something that my body is lacking, but also makes me feel like, wow, am I that weak? Like my nervous system is that weak that after having a
It's actually
bath,
not your nervous system. It's probably, I mean, it could be cerebral spinal fluid circulation, but part of it is your glands. Like your glands are getting like more stimulation, and your glands are part of like how we think is more, especially some like root ways of thinking is more the glands working through the nervous system than like our mental body. And
yeah,
and so it can change like your physiology somewhat, but it actually can even shift how your brain is functioning. Sometimes when, like if I'm having foggy thinking, I'll do the sage, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I'm like, still a little bit there. And I would go to the frankincense and myrrh and I'm like, yeah, gone, because it was tied to endocrine function. And
yeah,
so yeah, when I look at you, your endocrine system's a bit depleted. It's better than it was, but it's still a little bit depleted. And so
yeah,
the combination of those things, super good for you. Yeah, super,
yeah.
super good. And you don't
So
have to do it every day. Like that's the thing too, is like take a little tiny bit, and then if you feel good enough, like do it again the next day, and then you can take a couple days off and then do a little bit. Like I do frankincense and myrrh a lot. I probably only take it twice a week. Like it's not like I'm like, this is my regiment, and
yeah,
even Angelica Seed. I go through a phase where I take it every day, and then I feel kind of good, and then I got some pep in my step, and then I don't think about it until I start going, I don't quite have that pep in my step anymore. And I go back and I do a little tune up, and then I'm fine again.
yeah,
And so you'll find your rhythm in it when you're doing it. But I would say start exploring, because you're knowing what it does. And so go through and treat, and then see like, okay, this is bringing me up to a new level. And like you were saying, it might not be that you get your nervous system can handle it or your glands can handle it, but going through and doing that, the glands will start functioning, and it will start to cause physiological changes in your body that are very good, but it will make your body feel different than it did. And so there's some of it where you might have to get used to, like, oh, I feel a little different. I feel a little this. And at first it's like, ugh, but then you let a day or two go by, and you're just like, this feels kind of good. But at first you just feel, ugh. Think of it like this. Like when you meet somebody and it's new, and like you're like a friend or just a colleague or something, and there's that awkward little interaction at first, and then the second time it's a little easier, and then after about 4 or 5 times, it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I got this. That's what your glands are doing and your body's doing. Like you have that weird interaction. It's like, I don't know if I like this person. Like, I
yeah,
don't know. And then 2 years later, you're best friends, or you're getting married, or whatever it is. But at first, I don't know. It's because it's going to cause some sort of shift or change, and the body always doesn't like the displacement. Doesn't
yeah,
judge it like this is bad for you or this is good for you. It's just like, change is weird. Let's not do this. And
yeah.
so when you're doing this, your body is going to change a little bit, but do it at a rate that you can acclimate to.
Yep, yep, yep. No, get that. But now you nailed it with this one because being dependent on that medicine,
Yeah.
my glandular system works fantastic when I'm on it, but my digestive, my other stuff just gets
Yeah.
wrecked. And
Yeah.
so I was, just sitting and I was thinking on it and I was like, look, I've got a choice. And taking this medicine is short-term gain and long-term pain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it feels like doing all of this work is short-term pain and long-term gain because it's
Right.
not as quick,
Right.
it's
Right.
not as it's not as rewarding as taking a pill and just instantly your brain starts to function, da da da. But it is a big cost
Right.
at a big cost, it does it. But whereas I realize that doing all this work, it is slow, it is gradual, it is baby steps, but
Mhm.
it is more lasting.
Yes.
And yeah, my system is in a bit of a shock because it has forgotten this communication, and it does
Right.
feel
Right.
slowly and gradually it's coming back. So thank you. Thank you so
You're so
much.
welcome. Good.
And then go ahead, Lolly, then Deborah.
Hey, Lolly. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. So yeah, thank you for all the advice and the help. So I'm gonna go back to Linda again because she always asks like the questions that are super helpful. So if we're talking about the etheric chords,
Yes.
the blend, so I'm wondering, would that be beneficial? Well, two things. Would it be beneficial to have it like when I'm doing a healing? So would it be beneficial to have it in the background, like diffuse it in the
Oh, yeah.
background?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. You could
okay.
easily
So
do that. Like if you were going to do something like that, I would say either etheric chords or health rays. Yeah.
okay.
Because
And
like
then
sometimes like when like you're doing a healing or even with like talk therapy and stuff, there's a movement of energy going back and forth. And it just opens the flow that you can expel things off. But also for the other person, even if you're not doing it in person, it still is going to benefit from them because your energy body is setting a little bit of a pattern for that person. And so it'll be much easier for you to work on the person with either one of those. And so
oh, so
if you're having
even
to energize like a lot, do health rays because the tendency is that that could be a little congesting. Like when you are like blessing or projecting energy, even if you're giving it and projecting energy like to the earth or to like somebody who's very ill and they're just sucking up the energy, not all the energy that you're channeling is going to that person. There's still 10-20% that is staying with you, and your body is getting used to the movement, so it starts displacing things. So by the end of the session, or if you've done a few, if you look at yourself, you look congested, it's probably not contamination. It's just so much has gone through you. It's like doing meditation for a while. And I would work both of those. Yeah. I would also give chakra root cleanser and hyssop honorable mentions and all of that.
oh, so both
Chakra
do
root
that
cleanser
regardless as if it's
chakra root cleanser will help you to be able to go deeper on the person, even if they're not there. One of the things that I
oh,
used to
okay.
do a lot is I would have chakra root cleanser and a spray. And when I do distant healing, I would just like spray, call up their energy body and then spray it into the areas that I needed to work. And then if it felt like the energy got stuck, I'd just and then just kept sweeping. And it wasn't what I was cleaning my hand with, but it was like a way of doing distant aromatherapy.
So I was actually wondering about that. I have
Yeah.
that and Rue sitting right next to me. I do that
Right.
with Rue.
Yeah.
Okay. So good to know it's actually okay, that it's actually working
Yeah.
for both.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome.
And then if I'm doing, well, either of these things, so diffusing it is fine. I mean, I know you guys have a lot of incense, and that's actually another thing I'm wondering about, the difference between using something as a diffuser, which I do a lot,
Yeah.
as opposed to using as an incense.
They would overlap a bit. They would overlap a bit. I would say that the incense is probably a little bit better of cleaning up the aura and the environment, where the diffuser is a little bit better at going. It still cleans up the aura and the environment, but it's a little bit better at going deeper in like if you're using one of these things that we're talking about, going deeper into the person that you're working on. And so
Okay.
the incense is probably a little bit better for you, like when you're doing healing, because it's going to keep the contamination down. But for that other person, it will help you when you're cleaning up their field. But when you're going deeper, the diffusing actually would be a little bit stronger.
Okay. And then day to day, same idea.
Yeah, I mean we do both, but I mean we burn a lot of incense. Like that's how we
Yeah.
start our morning, because you're kind of shedding off the sleep. And then like we have segments of the day where I'm bottling or we're answering emails or this, but then there'll come a point where it's like, okay, I have to do, because I have a bunch of writing that I have to do every week. So at some point I was like, okay, I'm stepping away from the bottling and I come in to write. And so like when I do that, I usually burn a stick of incense to like shed what I was doing before, and then I'm able to focus on like, okay, it's time to write now. And
Yeah.
so I'll usually burn a stick or two like later in the day, like around 3 or 4 o'clock. And so I would
Mhm.
just integrate it into your schedule of like how you have your day segmented. And then,
Yeah.
incense is such a great way to purify without having to do a lot of heavy lifting. And so
Yeah.
I would just make that a
And
little
I
bit.
usually, so yeah, I usually don't use them a lot, but I'm starting to get
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
starting to add these as well. Okay.
Yeah.
And then still at the etheric chords, if I'm looking at pranic healing, usually if I need to clean the cord, between two people, person,
Mhm.
situation, electric violet, and then energize pink and gold.
Mhm.
Is there something else that?
Oh, for cleaning up cords like that, yeah. I mean, that's good, but like a lot of times, like if, like say it's like, like a couple's having fights and you're trying to clean up the cords between them so the fight dies down. You'd still clean up the cords, but one of the things that you could do like manually is clean the back of the knee, the ankle, and the soles of the feet. And part of what you're doing is you're, cleaning the cords is breaking up the back and forth, but part of what you want to do manually is also diminish the energies that they're dropping into the earth, because part of the conflict there is they're also dropping the conflict, like, okay, we're fighting, and they're dropping it into the earth. And so going through that, it's like it breaks up the nature of the chords. So in the etheric blend, that's already blended into that. So you don't have to do a lot of manual, like, put your awareness on all these different centers. But if you're manually working the energy, I would clean the chords and, like they're pink and gold, but then clean that lower part. I'd throw the perineum or the perineum, however you want to say it. I would throw that in the mix as well. But a lot of it is back of the knees, ankles, and soles of the feet. Emphasis
just
being
cleaning.
just violet or electric violet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
And then still on the this, okay, again going back to Linda. Okay, so when we're doing the armor of God, there was a question in one of the Q&A for one of the color classes about doing that using healing, and then focusing on the chakra, creating the color, and then
it's a little bit harder doing it like manually with energy. You can do it, but it's kind of like where you're going with it though. Like
right.
you still need to have the person like
So,
visualize. Like if you've seen me do it on Astara, I go, okay, arms and legs, visualize green, and then I'm stimulating the throat to fill the arms and legs up with green.
oh, so you still want them to visualize like you're doing on the other
It's
session?
helpful. Like otherwise you just manually have to go through the body parts, and so you can do it like manually, but it takes a lot longer. Like because the thing about
Okay.
stimulating the center, like with the oils or with energy, is when you're done, it keeps going. But if you're just manually putting it in the area, like the body will take it in and use it up, and then it doesn't keep like producing it because you've put some in there, and it will get better, but it doesn't necessarily keep going with it. Where if you go to the center, like, or we're using the oils, which kind of do the same thing. The thing is like when you stop, like the green in the arms and legs, it keeps generating green in the arms and legs for, a while. Like, it depends on the
Right.
person, but sometimes it will even continue for a few days.
So basically, projecting the color to the appropriate chakra,
Right.
and then okay.
And when you're
And
doing
then-
that, you're still you're projecting it at the chakra, but you're keeping your awareness on their arms and legs as they're visualizing
Right.
arms and legs. So you're both visualizing their arms and legs. You just have an extra thing you're doing.
Right. And then if I'm doing the sacred blue, then what am I doing? White?
You can do
Or
EV. Do EV. Like it's
Okay, I wasn't
a
sure.
bit of a different energy, but that's still close enough.
Okay. And what
Yeah.
about the red? What
The
would you do with the red?
red, so you can just do a little tiny bit of red in each nostril.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Just like
That works.
like this, just go done. Like just
Okay.
open,
Okay.
because what you're doing is you're opening up the channels.
Okay. And then okay. Now in the gold, there was something mentioned. It's on your website, so I've seen it a while back, and it's also mentioned in the workbook for this class that it can be further enhanced by using silver. What?
Yeah.
There's all the
So-
properties of gold, and it's really powerful by itself, and it can be enhanced by using silver. Shows up, and yeah.
Yeah, I probably went off on some tangent. I haven't released anything that has that in that. Basically, silver is the Kundalini. So
Okay.
yeah. A little bit more delicate. You have to be a little bit more delicate with that. And part of the releasing the stuff down the feet is you're generating the silver organically. Like, it's gonna, and it will acclimate to the person's body rather than just trying to stimulate it. So I can't remember what I said when I do remember talking about the silver at one point, but I don't remember what I said. What's it? You found it? What was it?
So it's when you're talking about gold healer, essential oil, you grow on its own. It does seem to have regenerating effect, but it is further enhanced by adding a small amount of silver.
Yeah. So the silver is releasing through your feet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe don't play with it too much with energy. Just because it's a touchy energy. Yeah.
Which I figured that, but I was also interested to know what it actually is.
Yeah. It's the Kundalini. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then something different. Babies and really young kids. I know there's a kit on the website. There's also a video that somebody was asking you questions. You went through everything, explained things, which is amazing. Here's my question though. You talking about like a little bit of older kids, maybe around 7 or 8 or 9. What about babies? How do you feel about like diffusing around babies, kids?
I mean, I've treated like a child that had, I think it was less than a week old. And, I put a drop of water. It was thyme linalool is what I used. I put a drop of water and then mixed it up in a glass. And then we would just give the baby like a little spoonful at a time, so I wasn't giving.
Oh, even internally.
Yeah,
Okay.
wasn't giving very big dosages, but sometimes the newborns or very young, they'll have jaundice or something like that, and I've knocked it out quite a few times with the thyme linalool, and so
and you actually mentioned that in the
and like a lot of times if you're just dealing with like a fussy baby or a baby that's having a hard time sleeping or I usually rotate between either lavender or Roman chamomile. And you know,
Yeah.
you can put it on topically, but like with lotion, don't like with a baby, I don't put anything on neat. But however, you know, you know, you can cover a lot of ground on a baby because they're so tiny, but rub it in their arms and legs first, and then their chest and abdomen. And the reason being that, especially with babies, that if you go right to their stomach or chest and stomach, they'll tighten up a lot, and then it will actually make them a little bit more agitated. So you relax the arms and legs and then put it on there. But like lavender is like giving a Valium to a little baby. Like it just is
Yeah,
super,
so
super soothing.
and so I actually want to check if I'm, because I did for my sister, I actually prepared for her, like, here's a roller with
Right,
jojoba, with
right,
with
right,
lavender.
right.
Put that even like back heart, bottom of
Yeah,
the feet.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but I wanted to double check because I actually didn't know that I can't use eucalyptus.
Yeah,
So
I mean
that it's
the
not the
thing,
best to diffuse or
yeah, it's like for a baby, myrtle works much better. It's just
right. I totally
the
get that.
the eucalyptus, like in a diffuser, is probably fine, but like on the chest, like even for an adult, like if you put
Yeah,
and
that's
eucalyptus, mostly what we're talking about here is globulus, like not the polybroc or the radiata, but globulus. And like if you put the globulus on the chest, which eucalyptus globulus is like what everybody calls just regular eucalyptus, like it's just when you start getting into the different ones, they'll call it eucalyptus radiata or eucalyptus whatever. But if somebody
yeah.
eucalyptus, it's globulus, right? And so
Okay.
even for an adult, like if you put like 4 or 5 drops on the chest, it actually is so strong that it actually will throw the breath off a little bit. Like it can be like too strong. And so a lot of times with an adult, you would either put it down lower or you put it on the upper back. And that would actually be how you know, help that person. And so there's a lot of medical aromatherapists that will say, don't use eucalyptus globulus on somebody who has asthma, for example. And part of it is because it's so stimulating that you actually can use it to treat asthma, but you have to like you know, use it like either lower down or on the sides or even like over here where, you know, the back is the best place, the upper back. And, you know, you get the benefit without it being overwhelming. And so with
Yeah.
a little one like peppermint, like things that are really stimulating for a baby, they're too stimulating. And so like
Even if yeah.
yeah, myrtle, like either a regular myrtle or green myrtle, or a lot of times I
And
use
then
green
and the
myrtle
bottom
just
of the
because
feet
it's
is
what's that?
and the bottom of the feet is okay to put
Oh yeah,
either, or
yeah,
you
yeah,
still you would put still myrtle and not like you would put myrtle and not eucalyptus even for the bottom of
I
the
would
feet.
probably stick with myrtle. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, that's
myrtle or
what
green
I
myrtle. Yeah, yeah. It's
and
myrtle's actually quite good for respiratory stuff, but for a little kid especially, it's good.
and
Yeah,
for overall immunity, like
yeah,
the
oh yeah,
baby gets sick
yeah,
often,
yes,
same idea.
yeah. Yeah, so baby gets sick, myrtle. Green myrtle has a little bit more of an anti-inflammatory effect. Thyme linalool would boost the immune system. Roman chamomile, also, you know, Melissa, if that's been integrated in some way. Even lavender can help a child get over colds and flus and things. You know,
Oh, good.
the thing with a child is they don't have to have the kind of dosage, and they don't need, you know, you can treat a lot of things in a child with probably like 10 oils. Like it's really, you know, they're a lot simpler to treat, you know, but
Yeah.
as they get older, you know, even 5, 6, it starts to get a little bit more complicated, but by the time they reach 7 or 8, you start treating them more like a little adult, you know, so you drop the dosage, but you can kind of go for it. Now, the exception would be if their body is bigger, like, you know, if they're taller or, they're growing really fast, then you can start treating them like an adult, even a little bit younger.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And then just one last question. The blessings. So when we're blessing the earth, right? So the hands are a little bit tilted downwards, but then you also curl the fingers. I don't think can we talk about that? Can you
Sure.
explain why? Okay.
It just refines the kind of energy coming out. It's actually a kind of mudra. And so
Right.
it helps increase the amount of energy coming through, and it makes the energy a lot more penetrating. So part of, like, even when you're blessing the earth, if the energy is not refined, it doesn't go in very deep. But the more you refine it, the deeper it goes and the more impact it has. So, like even this is stronger, like closing the fingers. And then when you tilt it down, it's even stronger. But when you fold down those fingers, and you're doing like that, there's a lot more refined energy that comes through. And so if you look at a lot of spiritual teachers, when they go like this, they a lot of times go like this. Like if you look at a lot of pictures, they're dropping that two finger. It's a very old mudra that has gotten used through the ages. Like what was that in? Was that a yoga book or a Kabbalistic book?
It's in a Kabbalistic book.
Yeah, it's in like well, I can try to find the reference. There's a Kabbalistic like yoga book or something, isn't it? Or
I could tell you.
yeah, we'll dig it up and we'll send you a reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hold on, I think
I was
right here.
wondering.
It's is it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this book. Call Adonai.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read Hebrew. It's okay.
Yeah. So it's Albert Schultz. Albert Schultz. And this was a recommendation of MCKS. It's actually referenced in the back of the books. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. And I've seen pictures of him doing that.
Yeah. Like,
as
in the
well.
early days he would go like this, but then after a little bit of time he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you
But
so
if you
much.
look, a lot of other teachers will do the same thing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'll really pay attention.
Yeah. Like this is the way I would say about MCKS. And like a lot of teachers like that, like when I'm around like high lamas and stuff, they don't waste a lot of words and they don't waste a lot of action and activity. So if you watch them, every little thing usually has some purpose or meaning. Like, it might not be apparent at first, but like, when you go through and you read those books, they're not long-winded, they're just like almost every sentence is a piece of information. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Deborah, then Denise.
Hey, Miss Deborah.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
It's me. I had great success with the last suggestions you had made for the problem with my hip with German chamomile.
Oh, good.
Yes. And putting it also on my mid and lower back.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Thank you with that. And then I read the latest bulletin, the blog for the newsletter, and it's like describing me.
Oh, Asthenia. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. Asthenia is a thing. It gets called, there's different kinds of asthenia. But
Yes. Well, I've been going through blood tests to figure out exactly.
Right.
But I've been living with it without realizing. I just thought it was depression from coming out of all the changes I was making. And then it was going on for so long, I requested blood tests. And then we started to figure out like how much I was depleted
Right.
with certain minerals, and then the blood having low white and red blood cells. And the latest is, even after being treated for my thyroid with thyroid medicine, that the antibodies continue to rise for the thyroid. So we're increasing the dosage, and I'm getting an ultrasound done with the possibility of having some sort of nodule that they're going to have to treat.
Mhm. Did they test for markers for anything autoimmune or?
No, I'm you know, it's a process when you go through traditional medicine.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
I
saying
have,
that that's what it is, but like,
yeah,
I always like to let's get a baseline on that. You know what I mean? But
the markers. So can you be a little bit more specific?
they'll just test
The
you
markers.
for like, again, that's not my area, but they usually do some testing where they see if you have a potential, I think it's just a blood test where they check for autoimmune like markers. And, like if you're looking at a thyroid, they want to know, is it an autoimmune issue or is it something else? So
Oh yeah,
they'll,
they're pointing out it's autoimmune. That's why
okay.
I'm getting ultrasound.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So with that, be a little like, you can still do things for the immune system, but do them like at a slower pace or a lower rate. Because you can even use very strong things for the immune system, but spread it out more because like you don't want to turn the immune system on the body really hard. And so, Melissa is good for regulating the thymus. The thymus is key to reducing the the autoimmune response. And so Melissa can be good, and Moroccan thyme can be very good. And then specific to the thyroid, clove internally can be very good for helping the thymus. And in fact, in like cases with lupus, when they start getting rashes and some of the other inflammatory things, you give them clove and like it shuts it all down. Like it takes a week or two, but depending on how far the condition has progressed, you're able to slow down those autoimmune responses. And I would use that as part of the treatment, regardless of what medications they put you on. There would be no contraindications. So I would just a little bit of clove every day, like 2 drops, like 1, 2 drops, like nothing major. Yeah.
Well, lupus, my oldest sister had lupus starting when she was in her 20s. It's in remission. So lupus came up in the doctor's words when I first got tested, and there was a marker that came up in the test that said possible autoimmune. And so she's put me in with a rheumatologist,
Right.
and I don't go see the rheumatologist until July. But in the meantime, she is surprised that I haven't responded to the thyroid medicine. So, and what's interesting to me is, the white blood cell count has gone down, and the red blood cells have not really gotten up to the level they
Mm-hmm.
would be expected. But it was really, I actually cried when I read your blog, because I've been, for the past week, I come home and it's like, oh, I have more energy. I'm sleeping more, even though I'm not a good sleeper for years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I can go to the gym and I can do workouts, but I have no desire. And your blog pinpointed that. And it
Mm-hmm.
just took all the pressure off, because like I've got like stacks of stuff on every surface in my place.
Mm-hmm.
I come home and I'm like, you know what? I am not going to beat myself up for this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going through something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you described it, it's like, okay, it could still be about the thyroid.
Yeah, it could be about the thyroid. There could be, you know, depletions in other areas, you know, because a lot of times we think of depletion as just being fatigued, but it can be parts of your body are working well, and then there's a part or a system that's just not. And you know, that's the idea of even using things like and I'm not saying that you should do these, but I'm just saying like cinnamon or peppermint, or in the herbal world, cayenne pepper, is because it jumpstarts everything. So that's one level. But sometimes even the jumpstarting, kind of like what we were talking about a little while back with Priya, is that even jumpstarting sometimes isn't enough. It's like it's jumpstarted, but it's still like operating on a lower level of function, you know. And so even though things might be jump started, still fortifying everything's, which is not necessarily stimulating. It's like a way of saying like strengthening without like being over like stimulating to the body. Like you just kind of fortify these areas, and it's not super quick. Like it, I mean, it's still quick enough, but it's not like you take it and like, and the first day you go, I feel amazing. You go, I feel better. And then like 3 or 4 days you go, okay, I'm feeling better. Like, you know, like you're gaining momentum going in that area. That's usually like how depletion, you know, how we respond to depletion is, you know, even like sometimes in meditation, for example, like you might be fine, and then you have a really good meditation and you go, oh, that feels good. And then you notice like you're shaking a little bit. That's depleted nerves. Like the nerves just got depleted. And so you do things to like strengthen the body, strengthen the nerves, and then the shaking goes away. And so, you know, frankincense and myrrh are fortifying to a lot of things. Um, Evergreens like firs and spruces can be, but that Asthenia, that write-up that I did on the Asthenia, that's like the go-to. Like, you know, you do a little time Thuyanol, or you do some militia for the emotional body. Because, you know, like the term for emotional depletion is burnout. I feel burned out. Like I feel like I just don't have the drive to go to work or to do this anymore. That is literally emotional asthenia. And then mental is you just don't cognitively process things like you used to. You just, somebody asks you a question and you're like, what? And you just, your mind won't kick in. And so the basil is really good for stimulating those cognitive processes. So I tried to like lay it out so that you could problem solve. Like you don't necessarily have to treat everything, but you know, going to time through, you know, I find is one of the gentler ways to treat the asthenia in the body. Oregano also works, but it's hot and it can be a little bit overstimulating. And if people don't take enough like water, or sometimes they have to take with food, they'll get a little weird irritation down by the navel. And so, like a lot of times, you notice I don't talk about oregano very much. Is like I don't want people to like misuse it or something. And so a lot of times I put it in a blend, but even when I put it in a blend, it's like an honorable mention. It's not like a driving force. You know what I mean? Like in the old days when I was blending it, I was like, you know, you make this blend and the oregano is like adding a little salt and pepper. Like it's a little flavor, but it's not the driving force in it. And there's a time and a place to use oregano, but for most situations, things like the time Tuyano, Ravensara, you know, some of those things that I wrote about, they're gentle, they're great for long term, they're good if you even do a little bit of a bigger dose, and they're not overstimulating, they're not going to keep you up, they're not going to make you overheat, you know, they're not going to do a lot of things that some of the other things could do. So yeah. Yeah, asthenia is a
So
real thing. Like I mean, it does not get talked about, I think, in the US like it does in other places, but
I
it
think it gets
is,
mixed in with depression, and
yeah.
um so can I just I just want to mention a huge thing for me right now
Mhm.
is I've changed a lot in my life to deal with the mineral depletion with like my diet and supplements, and now there's a whole routine I have to do, and routines are challenging for me all my life. So there's a routine I have to do because of needing to take the thyroid medicine, the timing of it, and stomach, and then I'm not sleeping. So I'm like, oh, that is challenging me. So when I read and then I'm squeezing in my meditation and the exercise, and then just the daily stuff that I need to do with some obligations.
Mhm.
So my question is, that was all the excuse, right? The whining. The question is, I noted the Melissa 1 to 3 drops was the top selection for the emotional piece, which I thought might be a really good one for me right now, because that's the thing that's bothering me the most.
Mhm.
And then you had all of those like B and C parts. And when I opened up the B part, it went on and on with several different oils. And I say that because for me, with all the other stuff, it
Mhm.
feels like a lot, even though I'm guessing when you think
Let
about
me
things, oh, you can do that in 20 minutes. Well,
right. Let me look at what I put, because honestly,
yeah, I was
I've
just
been
wondering,
writing so much, like I can't remember everything that I said.
yeah, I was wondering if I was going to approach it in order to just, what would be like the highlight one that I would be helpful to focus on, because the thyroid seems to take a long time to see results.
Well, I would say a couple drops of thyme internally,
Okay,
and then I would do like a drop or two of clove.
a drop into a clove. Okay, and not worry about that process where you are taking in, I guess it's inhaling an oil and you're doing the quadrants.
Just do, I mean, do it from time to time when you have time, or it's like, hey,
Okay,
I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, and you could do it while you're watching the movie, but just do it internal. Like,
okay,
it take you 2 minutes and you're done. And if you do that consistently, it will produce a substantial result.
okay. And then my other thought was, I want to continue with the thyroid medicine
Mhm.
because of dealing with the doctor, and it's not being quite identified. And then my original conversation with you a ways back was that I could possibly transition off a thyroid doing
Mhm.
the oil. Is that
Yeah,
re-
I've had people do that before.
okay?
But it depends on what stage it is and how aggressive the treatment is. Like, it depends on a bunch of factors, but it's very, very possible.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep praying for that. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And the clove is a big piece of that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Terrific.
yeah.
Thank you
The
very
clove will make the thyroid work better, and it will calm down the effects of autoimmune tendencies in the body and the impact it has on the thyroid.
Can I ask your opinion about ginseng? I just looked on your site and you don't have anything related to ginseng. Um, it, can that have a negative impact on the body?
Yeah. It can be a little overstimulating. It could generate a little too much heat. And if you're already having autoimmune markers, it could be a little too overstimulated. It depends on the kind of ginseng, though. Like if you were going to use ginseng, I probably wouldn't. I would probably, if I was you, I would probably have you use, how do you say it, Fo-ti or Fo-ti?
I said
Fo-ti, like Fo-ti. It has a fortifying effect, and it's much gentler. It's so much more gentle.
Can you
And
spell that again?
Fo and then Ti.
and I'll send a link
Yeah.
to.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so we're not really doing herbs on here, so Usually I just send people to like Amazon or their health food store. And so there is no essential oil for ginseng. I do get really high-end ginseng and make tinctures from time to time. But I mean, they're not things that you would use daily. It's like you would use it twice a year or something. Like, it's too strong, and it can be congesting to the body energetically. And the heat and the stimulation sometimes, if you're already having some issues like that, I would probably, it might aggravate the autoimmune response. American ginseng would probably not, but I would go right to the Fo-ti, like honestly. It's so much more gentle. Like it still does something in the same vein.
Okay. Helping
Yeah.
with the chi, the red, needing the, okay. I'm talking about something I don't really know anything about. Those are just the terminologies that were thrown at me.
Yeah, there's a red ginseng, there's a white ginseng, there's Korean, there's Chinese, there's all these different kinds. And then the age, there's different grades of ginseng. And so,
Okay.
ginseng's a whole ball of wax. And, at one point I was thinking about carrying it because I do make those tinctures from time to time, but I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They can generate a lot of heat, like, especially some of the stronger ones. And in extreme cases, I might use it, but for the most part, I think the herb's very good. Like, but there's a lot more autoimmune stuff floating around these days than there was 20 years ago. And so, like, even when we're talking about things, like I'm not saying everything that we can do. I try to do things in a way that if there is autoimmune potentials, that we're not causing problems. You know what I mean? So a lot of times
Not complicating it.
Yeah, I try to temper what I'm saying unless I know it's a very specific situation, but then I usually don't say it like on a Zoom. I say it like directly to the person or something so that people don't see it as like across the board. That's what you can do. And so ginsengs can be amazing, but I remember one time I thought I was being all sassy, and I go, I'm gonna make my body really strong, and I took a big dosage, and my blood pressure went through the roof. Like it went through the roof. And I mean, I had like I was doing healings on it, nothing was working. I had to do big dosages of blood pressure medicine for about 30 days to like calm it down. And I was like, I can't have any part of that happening to somebody that I'm treating. I was probably 30, 28, something like that. And I was like, I'm young, I can handle this. And I was like, no, I can't. I got really expensive good ginseng. Like I thought, I'm going to nail this. No. So that's the idea. It's like we want to do things that obviously that are very supportive without really, putting risk in the formula.
Okay. And I sent you a text earlier in the week. If I don't hear back from you, I don't want to. I know you're super busy. Should I text
You can
you?
always remind me, but I only usually schedule like once a week or something, so I just haven't probably gotten to it. So if I haven't answered in a day or two, I usually do it on Thursdays, and so
Okay, I probably just missed your
yeah.
schedule. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
And I'll double check. Sometimes there's so many texts that come in too. Like sometimes I do
Well, that's what I
like
thought.
overlooked it. And so don't feel
Yep.
bad about texting me more than once. Like it
Okay.
does not bother me at all. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
And then go ahead, Denise, then Peter.
Hey, Denise.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Sam. Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Well, I'm for the most part over the bronchitis, but I do have like the energy has not picked up, and I do have a little bit of congestion still. So I was just hoping you could dial me in. I've been paying attention to everything you've said. But
So like, are you waking up tired?
I'm exhausted all the time these days.
Yeah.
But
I
it could be,
would
I
like
do
that
have
as
a low thyroid. I do have a
with
low
that.
thyroid.
You do
I
have
do
a
have a low
low
thyroid. I always have, yeah.
I mean, I'd probably put you on clove for the thyroid, but even how we were just talking about using like you can use regular times, but that time thuyunol or time linalool, they're very soft, they're very gentle, and they work well long term, and they don't really cause overheating or anything like that. And I would actually do that. Like if
Internally, all
yeah,
this.
yeah, both
I
both
have,
of those. So clove 1 to 2 drops. I would probably do two drops in water internally, and then one of those types of thyme in water internally.
well, I have
But-
time linalool.
Oh, you good, perfect.
I do
So
have
that two or three drops twice a day.
okay, on that, the time, right? Twice a day.
Yeah, on
And
the time
just
though.
once on the clove,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, once on the clove.
And then we'll just check and see, because it's baby steps, but I'd be happy to see any kind. Don't go with the any kind of frankincense or myrrh right now.
I mean,
Just
you
stick with
could use
this.
frankincense, but time is probably going to resolve some of this for you. It will resolve some of the energy issues, and it does open up capillary function in the lungs. And any sort of time also has an impact on strengthening the respiratory rate. So it usually improves lung function. It's just not quick. Like if you did big dosages because you were really sick, you might notice a bit of an improvement. But here you're dealing with kind of long-term issue with all of this. So, because you were sick a while ago, so I would strengthen the body and then open up the lungs and the capillaries with taking it internal. You're already doing it for your energy levels, but it would improve the lung function and strengthen the breath. And then between the two, even though they're more about fortifying the body, you'll probably notice that you sleep a little bit better at night.
That would be wonderful. That would be
And
amazing.
let's give it a week, and then if you're not sleeping better, we'll make an adjustment. But I think like if you address the depletions, that it could improve.
Oh, I'm very encouraged. Thank
Yeah.
you. I won't ask you about June yet. She just finished her I think it's 4 months of chemo, but she's got to go now into surgery, then radiation.
Okay.
So, and we talked, she's the one we made the lemongrass for, the
Oh,
tonic,
yes.
the body tonic. Yeah. It's just that these last 2 doses of chemo were very, very strong, but I guess it's part of the protocol is what I'm guessing, because
Chemo is pretty hard on the body. Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
but she has, she said, her body's exhausted, but her spirit and her willingness is strong. And she's pretty much a spiritual warrior, that one. So yeah, but it's because she's working through this. I mean, it's so much fun. Yeah.
Well,
I
if she
don't know how
needs help, if she needs help with her energy levels, we can treat that without interfering with the process that she's going through, the treatment.
yeah,
And,
that would be great.
But if I remember right, we weren't sure if she would take things internal and right? Was that her or was that somebody else?
Well, we just started a real, gentle, because I think she's really
Gentle.
tried to
Yeah,
do
that's
everything.
what it was.
Doctors,
Yeah.
all the doctors, that she has, these
Yeah.
oncologists and surgeons and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's a process, but I can
Yeah.
kind of start to talk to her, because I know the energy really is kind of getting to her now at this point in time. But we'll talk about it, in the next couple of weeks. How's that? We'll see how.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. I
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
it.
And then I think we'll have time for one, but we'll still say, go ahead, Peter, then Troy.
Hey, Peter.
Let's get you unmuted. Go ahead, Peter, unmute yourself if you can. We'll see if we have time to come back to you, but because we are so short on time, okay, I see your video. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Peter. Go ahead. Yep.
I pushed the unmute button about 5 times. So anyway, I have a question about a question that Barbara asked you about her sadness, and I listened to the whole video that was put out on YouTube, and it was really a question that I would very easily ask you myself. And I don't know if you remember it, but
I don't.
she asked you what she can do about her sadness, more or less. And you asked her some questions, and you went into a really long and beautiful explanation of some of the dynamics of the energy that happens as a result of, feeling sadness or feeling any kind of trauma, actually. And you went into, like, say, the dynamics of it's actually an elemental that builds the thought. So it was really wonderful to hear. And a couple of times you almost went into, well, you want to do the protocol, and then there was something else that came up. So you never actually got into any kind of protocol with the oils. You mentioned a couple little things here and there, but if you can remember the gist of what.
So with the sadness, are you dealing with something known or something unknown? Like you know why you're sad, or
So
you have no idea that why you're sad?
it's 75% both. It's like 150% sadness.
Gotcha.
So I know I'm not a stranger to sadness or my aloneness.
Sure.
The sadness is most of the time, I would say, tied to an aloneness, a feeling of separateness and that kind of thing. And I'd like to say that it's sometimes verges on an existential type of aloneness, but I know it's tied to childhood trauma. I basically grew up pretty alone, and so I know it's tied to that. And so, and what else? It's like I say, I'm not a stranger to it, but recent, and I'd say over the months, it's becoming deeper and a little bit more prevalent, more frequent.
And is there something going on that might be stimulating it, or it's just happening?
Well, that could be both also. There's a lot going on in my life that could have something to do with it, not having like some things fulfilling in certain phases of my life, like my work, etc. But I think it more has to do with well, that was part of what you addressed with Barbara, was that even though could be something that triggered it, it's still kind of rooted or tied to the elementals or whatever that dynamic was.
Yeah, it can be tied to that. It can be tied to, sometimes there's like a behavioral component to it, not necessarily like your behavior is doing this or you're behaving that way, but we get ingrained in like a response that then has a behavior associated with it, that even if you go like, I want to go over there, like I want to go over there and like stand over there on the, and that side of the room, but your behavior goes, yeah, but we always go to the left. Like, and so you go, I'd like to go over there. And the behavior goes, yeah, but we're going over there. You know, it's not like a conscious thing, but it can be like a little bit of ingrained, and that's a little bit of the thing with the elementals. And so I would say also that, you know, when we look at the variation between intuition and intellect, keep me on time. Yeah. The intuition and intellect is that sometimes, you know, the thing with the intellect is it doesn't really resolve anything.
No, definitely not.
Maintain something. And so even though you go, okay, I'm alone and I had this trauma, part of it, the intellect is like, yeah, but we know what that is. And then you go, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And the intellect goes, but we're maintaining this. So don't worry. You go off and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
We'll forget, right?
Yeah, I'm not doing that hardly at all anymore as far as the intellect kind, like thinking about it. I'm more into the feeling mode of it, and then just letting the
It would be probably more in the unconscious. Like the thing with it is like you almost have to generate like a kind of movement that can happen. And so you could do it a couple of different ways. And sometimes I overlap them. But you could use something like ginger lily, or you could use astral projection. And you could do the materialization breath for one.
Okay.
But
Right.
I'd also do the soles of the feet, Ming Men, back, heart, crown. And part of that is it, like the astral projection or the ginger lily, helps with like the expansion of the emotional body, which means for it to expand, you're breaking down a pattern for there to be the expansion, right? And so what happens is, like, there's a big piece of you that has moved on, but like you said, like if there's things that are rooted in childhood, there's still a little piece of you like still stuck there. And in that movement, you're literally taking that piece that was stuck there and you're going, okay, I'm grabbing you by the hand. We're walking out of here. We're this little dance that happened, 30 years ago or whatever it was. We're walking away. Like, grab your things. We're going. Right. And so, there's an emotional component to that and a mental component. But really, times where you dig deeper into the stimulation of the parasympathetic activity. When you go deeper into rest and repair, when you go deeper into dreaming, you go deeper into that intuitive process. Literally, the intuition will just start resolving it without even you going, this is a problem. The intuition goes, yeah, I saw this coming a mile away. We're resolving this. Let's just move on, right? And so that blend will help with that, but also putting things on the body like tuberose body tonic or something like that, or sandalwood on the body. Sandalwood doesn't quite stimulate the parasympathetic activity, but sandalwood can be so deeply decongesting to things that have to do with the self. You know what I mean? Like anything that's like the self was wounded, the self was this, the self-esteem might be a little bit good in some areas, but not in others, self-image, anything like that. Sandalwood literally helps like pull you out of it and almost acts as like a protective component. Same with the tuberose. It almost acts like a protective component to the incoming thing. I'm so sorry, Peter, but we do have to jump on to the other thing.
Okay.
Can we still have this conversation sometime very soon?
Yeah, I'd love to, Greg. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, good. So sorry.